Welcome to Reporter's Notebook. We talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by energy and environment reporter Breanne Deppisch. Breanne, there's been a major incident with some pipelines in Europe, major source of energy, major source of international conflict. Talk a little bit about what's happened and what is some of the informed speculation about what might have caused the incident?
Yeah, definitely. So as to what caused it, we know there were blasts.
We're talking about the Nord Stream pipeline.
Yes, sorry, the Nord Stream pipeline. So there were 4 explosions along the Nord Stream pipeline. They thought there were 3. A 4th was confirmed later in waters off of Sweden and Denmark. The exact who carried out the attacks is completely unknown. Governments have not named anyone who is involved. Early speculation, of course, suggests Russia.
Right.
Although there have been no government reports to support that yet. And, Russia has also injected billions of dollars in investments, much like Europe has in these pipelines. Yes, though none was operational at the time. Of course, as we know, Nord Stream 2 was shut down right before the Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and Nord Stream 1 had stopped operating actually just weeks before this happened. Both were still filled with pressurized natural gas, which contains primarily methane. So a ton of methane has leaked into the ocean in the Baltic Sea. We don't quite know how much, and we won't begin to know until ships are able to get closer and assess the damage. But yes, this was a major international incident, and it really does threaten critical risks to infrastructure and energy supply in Europe.
Are there environmental concerns about it as well, given that it's leaking and it's getting into, or is there a environmental cleanup that might have to happen, or is there worry about that kind of damage?
There's definitely worry. It's really hard to know the exact scope of environmental damage right now, just because because the leaks occurred underwater before these kind of super methane emission events occurred mostly on land pipelines or fossil fuel plants, and so you're able to really accurately get a clear sense of what the damage is. But because it's underwater, it's hard to observe. We do know that one of the leaks bubbled. It was about the amount from the surface. There was observed about a half a mile in diameter of just bubbling to the surface of methane, which isn't great.
Sure, of course.
A lot depends on the size of the rupture itself in the pipelines, and a lot depends on a lot of local surrounding infrastructure and things as well. But yeah, again, until ships can get closer, there's not much that can be determined.
And for the record, not that anybody was really alleging otherwise, and maybe in Moscow, I don't know, but the United States military has come out and said, wasn't us.
Yes, I think we've seen that from most governments, including Russia. Although obviously much is to be determined. But yes, of course, the U.S. has come out and said that it's not us. They, like NATO and like the EU, have really vowed retaliation. Once they figure out who sabotaged the lines. And actually, German newspapers reported earlier this week that the U.S. the CIA had warned German authorities earlier this summer about potential threats to its energy infrastructure. So this was something that I think intelligence analysts had on their radars, I guess, more or less. And in recent weeks, there were also unidentified drones seen flying in oil fields around offshore oil fields in Norway.
So, obviously there's always been a lot of concern about terrorists or hostile foreign governments attacking energy sources, power grids, key parts of the energy infrastructure, because there's clear economic implications when you do things like that to an enemy.
Absolutely, and although really right now, neither pipeline was supplying the EU with gas that had obviously been kind of shuttered for the near future as the war in Ukraine continues. But yeah, at some point, I imagine that the EU would have liked to have that as a possible source of supply, and so it really just makes clear that in the near future, Russia is unlikely and unable, I guess, to resume gas flow.
So President Biden had some strong words about gas prices as a hurricane hit Florida. He really had a message for gas companies and for sellers of gas. What did he have to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Big gas week, I guess, for the world. But yeah, Biden warned in the run-up to Hurricane Ian, which struck Florida as a major Category 4 storm. He, for the second time in as many days, he really warned oil and gas companies not to use the event to inflate prices. This was the second kind of accusation or suggestion that oil and gas companies were price gouging.
Right.
You know, and he was noting kind of the disparity between oil prices, which have dropped a little bit this past month, and gas prices in the U.S. He noted yesterday that before Hurricane Ian struck, that it was only forecast to impact about 2% of production.
Sure.
So he was like, you know,
can't use that as an excuse to raise prices.
Can't use that, exactly. Yeah, we've seen a lot of this rhetoric echoed by Democrats in Congress, more calls from big oil to testify on allegations of price gouging as well.
Because price gouging has been a major argument for why the Biden administration says inflation is happening generally, and specifically in the energy sector, that it's a big driver of higher energy prices.
It has, and it's something that's been circulated this winter ahead of a feared spike in gas prices once again.
So if gas prices spike again, obviously, now the timing might work out okay for them in the midterm elections, or it might not, but it's obviously a concern for the Biden administration because a very big talking point they've had about maybe that inflation might be about to crest is that the gas prices have come down. And they've talked a lot and taken a lot of credit for the extent of the decline in gas prices since they peaked earlier in the summer.
But of course, if they go back up, then it's not them. It's
Right.
the oil companies.
Yes,
So.
yes. It's back to price gouging and possibly Putin's price hike. And
Exactly. So a lot of back and forth and some rhetorical shifting there.
well, we'll have to pump them for some more information on that later.
Exactly.
Thank you, Breanne.
Thank you, Jim.
You can read Breanne and subscribe to our Daily on Energy newsletter at washingtonexaminer.com.